Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for PWSA's clinical trial update webinar. Today we have joining us the team from the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research, who is sponsoring the VNS4PWS trial. So I'm just going to quickly introduce who each of our speakers are, and then I'm going to allow you guys to take it from here and do a little bit more intro into who you are and what your roles are. So joining us is Teresa Strong. She's one of the founding members of FPWR. She's trained as a medical genetist in medical genetics, and she is the director of research programs for the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research and a mom to a young man with PWS. Lisa Burnett, I'm going to introduce you anyway. So Lisa is the Director of Translational Research, and she joined the FPWR team in 2022. And then finally, we have Lisa Mattisvac. I've been practicing all day. Lisa is the PATH Study Coordinator for the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research, and she is also the mom of a young man who just turned 18. So welcome, ladies. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. So we have some slides to tell you a little bit about the VNS4PWS study. So I'll share those. And as Stacy said, we're doing a clinical trial to look at whether vagus nerve stimulation can reduce temper outbursts in individuals with PWS. And this trial is sponsored by the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research. And it is a little unusual to have a nonprofit organization sponsoring a clinical trial. So I just wanted to introduce you to the other members of the VNS study team, as well as our advisors. So in addition to me and Lisa, who is conveniently an audiologist and has a lot of experience in devices and ears, we have Lauren Schwartz, who is another mom of a young lady with PWS. She's a clinical psychologist, and she's helping with the assessments on this study. Carolyn Verona-Diaz is also on the FPWR team, and she is managing all of the data on the study. And you also met Lisa Burnett, who is the head of operations and who is coordinating with the different clinical sites, as well as with the FDA and our regulatory oversight. In addition, Deepan Singh, who you may be familiar with, who is a psychiatrist at Maimonides, is a principal investigator, clinician on this study. And we also have as an advisor and head of our data safety monitoring board, Dr. Tony Holland, who is a psychiatrist from Cambridge University and who actually had the idea in the first place to evaluate vagus nerve stimulation for PWS. Julian Koenig is an expert in VNS, and he has been really helpful helping us understand how best to use the devices. And then we have Marie Gantz, who is a biostatistician with RTI, also a mom of a young man with PWS, or a boy with PWS, and her colleague Becky McNeil, also from RTI, are the statisticians helping us with the study. So, we have put together, I think, a really outstanding team to help guide us in this clinical trial. So why are we addressing temper outbursts in PWS? So for those of you who have loved ones with PWS who experience temper outbursts, you probably don't need much convincing that this can be a really challenging aspect of the PWS behavioral profile. So outbursts are these highly emotional or explosive events in which the person with PWS becomes sort of much more angry for what the situation calls for most individual. And their anger and their upsetness seems to be out of their control. And it is very unpleasant for everyone involved. So it is hard on parents, it's hard on siblings. It is not helpful in building friendships if someone is prone to temper outbursts. And I think most of all, it's no fun for the person with PWS. I mean, they very much, when when the outburst is over, they typically really regret it, but they just felt like it was something they weren't able to control at the time. And not every individual with PWS experiences these outbursts, but it is a real problem for, a little over half of individuals with PWS, and it can really impact lives. And, when we do surveys of our community, these behaviors rank pretty high as one of the most important things that we would like to see improvements in. So the other piece of the puzzle for this study is the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is a large nerve that extends from the brain all the way down through the periphery of the body, down through the GI system. And it regulates a lot of the involuntary physiology of our bodies. So the rest and digest signals, so kind of these big picture signals, it regulates respiration, heart rate, and blood pressure as part of like the fight or flight. So it's a really important nerve in integrating signals to the brain and then having the brain send things back out to the periphery. So because of its central role in so much physiology, for a long time now, physicians and researchers have been looking at whether you could modulate the vagus nerve and whether it might have benefit for a variety of different, issues for individuals. And there has already been approval for using vagus nerve stimulation for a number of different disorders and diseases, for treatment-resistant depression, for migraines, for cluster headaches. It's been approved for use in some difficult-to-treat forms of epilepsy, for example. But we, in this study, are investigating whether a wearable VNS device might reduce temper outbursts. And the VNS, the stimulation is usually done one of two ways, either with an implantable device in which there's a surgical implant under the skin and then that hooks into the vagus nerve, or a wearable device. And that's what we're talking about today. And that you can take on and off. And it actually stimulates a spot within the ear. So the vagus nerve goes all the way out into the ears, and you can stimulate a spot, and that ends up stimulating the entire vagus nerve. So what made anybody think about using the vagus nerve stimulation to reduce temper outbursts? Well, there's a bit of a story, a backstory, and it starts with Dr. Tony Holland. As I mentioned, several years back, several groups were looking at whether VNS, vagus nerve stimulation, might be helpful in reducing obesity. So it would make sense, since the vagus nerve goes from the brain to the gut and kind of integrates a lot of those signals, that maybe you could modulate that signaling and reduce obesity. So Dr. Holland thought it would be interesting to try whether it would reduce hyperphagia in PWS. And so he worked with 3 participants who got implantable devices and, underwent this surgery and got vagus nerve stimulation. So the bad news from that study was that it really didn't seem to help the hyperphagia very much. However, there were 2 individuals who, when they started the study, had, very strong temper outbursts and frequent temper outbursts. And both the individuals and their families remarked about how much improved their behavior was after there had been, a certain number of weeks or months of vagus nerve stimulation. So this was really interesting, but the study wasn't really designed to measure improvements in behavior. So Dr. Holland started a second study, this time with some funding from FPWR, and the technology for the VNS had changed to where he could now use a wearable device rather than having the participants undergo a surgery. This was another pretty small study, just 5 participants, but it was set up to really measure whether there was a reduction in these temper outbursts over time. And what Dr. Holland and his colleagues found was that in 4 out of 5 of the participants, there was a really significant reduction in the number of temper outbursts that they were experiencing. And all of these individuals wanted to keep wearing the VNS at the end of the study because it had helped them so much with these behaviors. So that got us really interested in, is this a viable treatment for temper outburst behavior in PWS? And we were really interested in doing a large study that would give us kind of a yes or no answer on this question. But I'll mention that the incentive structure for orphan drugs is very different than devices. So for drugs, there is a financial incentive for companies to go into rare disease and do studies. And that's why we see a lot of activity, or that's one of the reasons that we see a lot of activity in the PWS space. It's not the same for devices. So the device companies don't have the same financial benefits for studying rare disease populations. So it is not financially viable. And we talked to a lot of different device companies, and it is not really financially viable for them to do a lot of rare disease studies. And that's when FPWR decided that if we were going to get an answer about this question about whether VNS might improve behaviors in PWS, we kind of were going to have to do it ourselves. And that is what brought us to this VNS4PWS study, which is a phase 3 device study to see if a wearable VNS device reduces temper outbursts. And the aims of the study are to evaluate the safety and efficacy of the T stands for transcutaneous or wearable VNS device in reducing temper outbursts in people with PWS. We also are looking at whether there are additional benefits beyond the reduction in temper outbursts, for example, in quality of life, or maybe in eating behaviors, in addition to reduction in temper outbursts. And we would like to look at also who might be most likely to benefit from this treatment. So we're collecting data on the characteristics of people coming into the study to see if we can tease out who might benefit the most from this kind of a treatment. So with the team that you saw on the first slide, which included quite a few advocates or parents of individuals with PWS, we designed the VNS4PWS study, which is shown here. And we really tried to make it as easy as possible on the participants. So we know that getting a participant with PWS to a clinical trial is a challenge in any circumstance, but we're now talking about a group of individuals who have particularly challenging behaviors. So we understand that it's not easy for, families to make it to a clinical site and do a lot of traveling, especially in this group. And so we have, for this study, which lasts a year, we have just 2 in-person visits. And so the study starts with a screening period that lasts 1 to 2 months. And during that screening period, families are asked, or the caregiver is asked every day to report on behavior, whether there was temper outburst behavior. We do this through a text message. It takes less than a minute to complete, but it gives us a good baseline reading of the frequency and the severity of temper outbursts in each individual. During that screening period, we also ask that caregivers take their loved one with PWS to a local LabCorp at their convenience and have a safety lab drawn, which FPWR will, arranges and pays for, just to make sure that there's no unexpected medical problems that are going on. If it looks like the participant is a good match for the study, we then work with a clinical trial site and get the first in-person visit set up. And it's at that visit that the person will get their device. And then we ask them to wear it 4 hours a day, every day for 9 months. Then there's this, and during that time, there's monthly telehealth visits and some assessments. That's all done remotely. After that 9-month period, there's a second in-person visit, and then there's a period where the individual with PWS will not wear the device for 3 months, and we monitor behaviors all during that time. Then after that, if the family and the participant feel like the device has been helpful for them, they can go into an open label extension and have another year of wearing the device 4 hours a day. So that's an overview of the clinical trial protocol and the activities that both the participant and the caregiver have to do. I will now, now I'm going to tell you one more thing before I turn it over to Lisa Mattisbeck. So who can participate in this study? So we are looking for individuals with PWS age 10 to 40 years who have a confirmed genetic diagnosis of PWS and who have a history of temper outbursts over the last 6 months of or longer. We're also we're allowing medication use, prescription medication use. This study is not for individuals who are in other trials of investigational medicines, but if you're on prescription medicines, that's fine as long as it's been a stable dose for 90 days. And as I said, they can't be participating in another clinical trial. So if we have an individual like that and they are experiencing temper outbursts, meaning that they have behaviors that are excessive for this situation, it's inappropriate for their age, it seems to be beyond their control, and it is limiting their ability to participate in activities, that would be a person who is perfect for this clinical trial. So I will hand it over to Lisa, who's going to talk a little bit more about the device itself and some specifics there.
Hey, everyone. So I just want to kind of give you an overview of the device itself and the expectations for wearing. As Teresa mentioned, we do ask that the participant wear the VNS device for 4 hours per day. This can be worn while they're going about their daily routines. It could be while they're having a meal, watching a show, playing on a tablet, taking a walk outside. Anything that they're doing that they normally do, those are all perfect times to be wearing the device. That 4 hours a day does not need to be one continuous 4-hour block of time. It can be broken up into multiple sessions. We do ask that at least one session is a full hour long, and that the shortest session is no less than 15 minutes. But however that looks in your loved one's day, however you can make 4 hours work, is fine. The device itself will keep track of that time, so you don't need to do that. There's both a visual indicator on the VNS device as well as a timer that shows up on the app that pairs with the device so that you can monitor and see the time usage. The device itself is a pretty straightforward and easy device to use. It's relatively small. It fits in the palm of your hand, as you can see here. And it has a cable that goes up to a piece that's worn on the ear. I have it on currently. And this device will provide some low-level stimulation to the individual with PWS. And as a caregiver, you'll help them get that set up. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. But in essence, the device has some very simple functions, as I mentioned, an on-off button, a start-stop button, and an increase and decrease button for the stimulation rate. It will display the battery charge that's available, and it will give you some indication if the earpiece is seated properly on the ear. Of note, the US FDA has determined that this study is non-significant risk. So although we can't anticipate, or rather we can't guarantee that there won't be any adverse events, it is highly unexpected and would be unlikely to experience anything significant when using this device. And Teresa, if you can go to the next screen. So as a caregiver, you'll have a number of responsibilities. We hope that you won't find these to be too terribly challenging, but they are things that are important that you do as part of this study so that we get good data from you as the caregiver on how this device is being used and how it's impacting your loved one. So as Teresa mentioned earlier, there will be a text message that's received each evening at 7 p.m. your time, in which you'll be asked how many temper outbursts occurred today. If you answer with any number greater than 0, you'll have 2 quick follow-up questions that ask you to rate the duration and the intensity of the worst one. And we provide the rating scale, so you're only ever answering with a number or a letter that corresponds to that rating scale. And in average, these surveys take less than a minute to complete. But it is important that they're completed regularly and consistently. Secondly, as the caregiver, you'll supervise your loved one with PWS in wearing the device and setting the device to the proper stimulation levels each day, and help to ensure that they work towards wearing it for that required 4 hours daily. You'll also need to regularly charge the VNS device. With using it for 4 hours a day, you can usually get about 2 days use out of it, and then it will need to be charged. And then additionally, you'll send us device logs each week. This is another simple process. In the application that pairs with the device, there is a button that you'll press that generates the data log, and then you simply email that to us. You'll receive a reminder to do that on Fridays, and you'll just send that to me each week. And then lastly, you'll be asked to attend all study visits. As Teresa mentioned, there are 2 in-person visits and then monthly telehealth visits, which are pretty quick. I would say on an average, most people are conducting those appointments in anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. Next slide. We have a number of clinical trial sites that are open and enrolling now, as well as several that are planned and coming soon. As you can see by the representation on this map, we've recently had a number of new sites open. So we currently have 9 active study site locations ranging from East Coast to West Coast. So, and everything in between. So hopefully there would be a site that would be close and convenient to you. And if not, the next slide will give you an overview of some support that we have, which is a partnership with Angel Flight Northeast. We have partnered with them, and they are graciously arranging with families to have chartered domestic flights for study visits that are within a reasonable distance to fly. There are pilots that volunteer their time and fly our participants across the country. There are also some possible commercial flights available if the flight is farther away, and these are all at the discretion of Angel Flight. And they do also offer some Amtrak tickets for those that want to do rail travel as well. And we're pretty excited to see that enrollment is going well. We currently have 28 participants enrolled in the study, so we are 27% of the way to completely enrolling. As you see, we have a goal of 102 participants to be enrolled, and we've gotten this far in large part to the enthusiasm and the commitment of our PWS families. So I do want to take a moment and thank everyone that has showed an interest and has inquired about the study and has enrolled in the study. So we're very excited to see this, and we would very much like to see full enrollment so then we can get an answer to the question of whether or not this treatment may be effective in reducing temper outbursts in PWS. As I mentioned, we have 9 clinical trial sites currently. We have more on the way. Stay tuned for more opportunities and different sites to open. But we do need your help to fully enroll this study and to understand if this is a safe and effective treatment in reducing temper outbursts in PWS. So I encourage anyone who has questions to contact me. I believe the next slide gives my contact information. There is a QR code that you can scan using your phone, and that will take you to our website where you can learn more about the VNS study and watch a video about the VNS and what it looks like to wear the device. My contact information is also here. You can either email me at vns@fpwr.org or give me a call or text me. The number is 760-420-5878. And with that, I want to thank everyone for listening, but more importantly, we want to turn it over to any questions that you may have. And Stacy, I don't know if you have any questions that have come in. Maybe we can take a look here. Oh, Teresa, I'm going to start reading some of these out. It looks like I can see them as well. So the first question is, how do we define a tantrum? And I think, Teresa, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I think, as I said, there was a slide. Oops, I'll go back. That we are sharing with families, and also asking families to share with teachers or anyone who's interacting with your child about what is a temper outburst. So is the behavior excessive for the situation? We all get angry sometimes, but is it a little over the top? Is it inappropriate based on their age? Does it seem beyond their control, and is it interfering with their ability to get things done or interact with others? So I will say that, for some individuals, it's pretty obvious when a temper outburst is. They're yelling in your face, right? So that's an easy one. But for other individuals, it's more of, melting down, shutting down, becoming unresponsive. So it doesn't have to be, something sort of throwing things around. I think the most important thing for this study is that whatever you define a temper outburst to be, that you are consistent throughout this study. So again, for some individuals, it will be more of a shutting down than, yelling or anything. If that's what a temper outburst looks for your loved one, then, as long as you count that consistently across the trial, I think, we'll get the information that we need.
So the next question, and I can address this, is can my child wear the device at school and during travel? So there's nothing inherently wrong with wearing it in any environment. However, school does invite some other considerations, and we've sort of made the guidance to perhaps wear it at home. And the reason being is the device needs to be positioned just so on the ear, and then it does need to have a set stimulation that requires some careful consideration of the placement and just making sure that the child is feeling the stimulation, and then we turn it down to a slightly lower level. And it may be more than a teacher or others in the school environment are prepared to manage. There's also the opportunity for other students to perhaps touch it or do things to it, so maybe best to wear it at home. As far as travel goes, we've had people take it to camp. We've had people, wear it on vacation, on the plane, different places. So there's no reason not to wear it while traveling. Another time when we say that it's best not to wear it is while they're sleeping, and that's because the electrode needs to be just so on the ear, and if you're moving about while you're sleeping, that electrode may become displaced, and you may think you're stimulating when in fact you're not. And moreover, we don't want the cord from the device to sort of get wrapped around the neck. So for safety reasons, we ask that it's not worn while they're sleeping. Though if somebody falls asleep in a car ride, which is a great time to have it on because you've got a captive child in the seat, and they've got it on, and you can knock out 15, 20, 30 minutes in between drives to school or to therapy or wherever it is you're going. If they fall asleep in the car, that's fine. There's less risk of it, getting wrapped up. And if it moves a little bit, that's okay. But you're close by and can monitor that. Oftentimes parents will report that their child falls asleep after school on the couch when they have it on, and that's okay too. Again, just kind of keeping in mind big picture about safety, about the cord wrapping around the neck, and just knowing that placement of the electrode can be displaced if they're moving around a lot or they lay on the device. Another question also came in, Teresa, with regard to participating. Is it possible for your child to participate if they're also in open label for a separate trial?
No, unfortunately not. And I think, we want sort of a clean information about, whether the VNS is working. I think any open label study that they're in will also want kind of clean information about whether, the effects of the drug. And so for those purposes, I think it's best, or we, our experts along with us, decided that it was best not to include anyone who is taking an experimental medication.
So another question has come in that says, what if my child is in the middle of a meltdown and I need to get the device on them? I'm guessing I should wait until they calm down. So that's a really great question. We want you to be using the device in times when your child or adult with PWS will be accepting of it being on, and trying to put it on in a time when they may have heightened emotions may invite some more unwanted behaviors. So it would be advisable to use it during times when they are calm and otherwise, willing to have this on. Obviously, we need their participation for this to go well. Merely putting the device on and turning it on is not expected to change the behavior in the moment. Rather, we expect that change in behavior, if it's observed, will come with time and consistent use of the device. Teresa, oh, sorry.
I know when we were sharing the announcement about the webinar, there was a few questions on those posts, and many of them have been answered through the Facebook pages, but I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to, there's a concern that if the child breaks the device,
Mm,
what does that look like?
yes.
Well, of course, we hope the child doesn't break the device, but we understand that we are giving the device to people who have temper outbursts. And so, we would not charge you for the device. We would replace the device, and we would hope that it doesn't happen again. But, kind of I can't tell you how many pairs of glasses I went through at my house. So I think we have a good understanding, and we would work with you to try to minimize those incidents. But we, if it breaks, we'll send you a new one.
And then Lisa, you had mentioned on the slide talking about getting up to the wearing it for the 4 hours. Does
Mhm.
that mean there's a period of time that's acceptable for less than 4 hours?
So, like many things, it can be an adjustment period for our loved ones to try something new. Getting into a routine can often be helpful in their gaining acceptance of participation and wearing the device. But we know this is something new and it may take a little bit of time. So initially, if someone is reluctant or needs that sort of ramp up period to wearing it, we want time, the time being used to grow. So we can advise to start in increments that seem manageable to the person with PWS. Sometimes it takes a little negotiating, and it may even take some rewards, perhaps even to encourage the person to use it. But yes, we do have some expectation that it may take some time to get up to that 4 hours of use, and we'll work with the families to give them some strategies and some guidelines to help them get there. But it's more often than not, we're seeing that it is taking, couple of days, a couple of weeks even to get to that point of wearing it consistently for 4 hours, and that's okay. We're not going to look at this 30 days later and say, oh, you're only at 3 hours, you're out. So we want to be generous with the time that it's going to take for the person to get to that wearing time.
Great, thank you.
Yes. So Teresa, there's another question that says, what if a drug gets approved and is no longer investigational?
Then it's no longer investigational. So that would be a prescription drug, and that would be okay with us. So yes.
Fantastic. And then the next question is the preliminary blood draw required to participate?
The answer is yes. Again, it can be done at your local LabCorp. Actually, we require blood and urine, so they have to pee in a cup. And what we found, what some of us know, is that our kids are not always cooperative with that. And so we've talked to LabCorp. You can go by the LabCorp and get a sample cup ahead of time and collect the sample at home if that's better for the person with PWS. You have to bring it in the same day. You can't sit around. And then, yes, we are requiring a blood draw, and it is just to make sure, again, that there's nothing unexpected going on medically, that, we don't want someone coming into the study who has a different medical problem that's not being addressed. So that is just a baseline to make sure that there's no unexpected medical problems before they enter the study.
And the next question is, my daughter is 20. Can this device help with eating problems?
So, as I said, Dr. Holland initially investigated this because he thought it might reduce hyperphagia. Certainly, it didn't show strong evidence of reducing hyperphagia. I think and now I'm interpreting what somebody else told me, so it's a little bit of hearsay. But what I've heard is that as people use the VNS, they become a little bit more able to be reasoned with, and that can be helpful in improving eating behaviors. So does it decrease hunger? Probably not. Might it make it a little bit easier to manage the eating the diet and choices? that I think is where it could potentially make a difference. So I think that people need to have realistic expectations about the eating. I don't think it is something that will, have an immediate or strong impact on the hyperphagia. But I think what people reported is that individuals who have had the stimulation or are using the device don't immediately go to being upset, that there's a little bit of time to kind of reason and talk through things a little bit more.
Another question has come in that says, do I have to be a patient to participate at a specific site? And the answer to that is no. So certainly if you are a patient at a clinical trial site, you are more than welcome to say that you would like to consider going to that site. But you don't need to be a patient at that site. We do have 2 sites, however, that are accepting participants aged 10 to 19, and those are the sites at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore and Mercy Children's in Kansas City. But aside from those requirements, participants aged 10 to 40 can go to any of the sites that are currently open and available, again, with more to come soon.
Lisa, I'm not sure if you know. So when Dr. Holland initially did his study, when he was looking at hyperphagia, he was looking at patients in the UK. Is there any intention to expand this to an international trial instead of just US based?
At this point, we are simply doing this in the US. There's some considerations with how to import devices overseas and things like that. And if equipment needs replacing or an electrode needs replacing, we want to make sure that we're able to get supplies and accessories to families quite quickly. There's also the consideration of the telehealth appointments, and our physicians that are in the study are licensed in the US and in their particular states. So there's some challenges with doing telehealth outside of the United States for that reason.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about
that. Another question has come in, Teresa, that says, what happens when the trial ends? If it's successful, does my child have to wear the device for life?
So the answer is probably yes. I mean, we don't know, but probably yes. So 2 things. First of all, as I think has been mentioned, this is not an FDA approved device in the US yet. The company that makes the device is working towards approval or clearance here in the US. Lisa Burnett can correct me if I say anything wrong on that. So what our hope is, we have the 1-year trial and then a 2nd year with an open label extension. By that time, the company will have gotten clearance, so that if the study proves successful, it will be relatively easy to access the device. But Dr. Holland's study did show that, or what we, would anticipate, is that you will need to continue to do the stimulation to see the effects. As a matter of fact, anecdotally, one of the implanted devices, all of a sudden the person started having behaviors again, and it turned out that their battery had gone dead. So they had to go and surgically replace the battery. So we realized that is, a downside, that you would have to wear it every day for the rest of your life. On the other hand, if it makes the person feel better, and if it makes the family dynamic that much better, I think there would be motivation on everybody's part to be using the device, including the person with PWS, because, again, they don't enjoy these temper outbursts either. I think, it's not pleasant for anybody, and being able to decrease those, I think, would be a motivator for them. I don't know, Lisa, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think that was perfect.
Great. And I will say, I think that if this does prove successful, I mean, we will be highly motivated to make sure that, people have access to the device.
Another question has come in that says, can I participate if we don't live there in the States but are willing to travel? So again, I think there's considerations with, for example, the lab work. We're only contracted with LabCorp, and those labs are only located in the United States. So there's that consideration. Also, the telehealth, again, going back to the study doctor being able to provide the necessary care as part of the study. The person has to be in the United States in order for those visits to occur.
I mean, I think
And, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, we are a small nonprofit, so just being able to do the study in the US, you know, it's been a steep learning curve for us. So we appreciate your patience that we're not really in a position to do a worldwide study at this point. We are, however, you know, talking to other researchers around the world and trying to coordinate with them. You know, if they can get evidence in their country and we can get evidence in the US, I think that strengthens the argument that this would be a good treatment for people with PWS. So we are working on that.
And I wasn't totally sure if we interpreted that question correctly. There's maybe a little typo there, but in case the other possible interpretation was, what if you don't live in a state where one of the study sites is, but you're in the US and you're willing to travel? Yes, you can cross state lines and travel to the study site. And we have a partnership with Angel Flight if you do need air travel. So yeah, I'm not sure, but just to rule that out.
Cover all the bases.
Good to clarify. Yes.
I have a question coming off of the Professional Provider Conference. So would people who are residing in a certified setting, like a residential group home, be able to participate?
The answer to that is yes. It does take some additional considerations, but we've put together some guidelines to help parents have conversations with the professional caregivers to help understand if this is an arrangement that would be feasible, because it would necessitate the professional caregivers communicating on a daily basis with the caregiver or the parent to report on behaviors, because the parent is going to be the one that's responding to those text messages. When it comes to the quarterly assessments, we want the perspective of the professional caregivers to be taken into consideration when those surveys are completed. So we have those surveys in a document that's a fillable document that the parent can share with the professional caregiver in advance of those quarterly appointments, so that when they go and sit down with the study doctor to fill these out, they have that perspective as they're answering those questions. But also, we need the professional caregiver to be the one that is comfortable putting the device on the person each day and setting it to the correct settings, and more likely also transmitting that data that's going to occur weekly. I know some individuals go back and forth between home and their residential placement. The frequency with which may vary from individual to individual. We do find that it just takes that extra level of communication. We're happy to provide some assistance or training to the professional caregivers to make sure that they're comfortable with managing the device. And, you know, in many instances that can go quite well, but it does require that the professional caregivers are buying into this process as well, because again, they have to be appropriately reporting on the temper outbursts and ensuring that the person is wearing the device for the required amount of time each day.
Great, thank you.
Teresa, there's another question that's come in that says, can this device increase energy levels in a body?
I would say probably not. I think what we expect to happen is that it would stimulate the vagus nerve again, which is hitting that kind of fight or flight response. And I think the hypothesis is that it, over time, because this doesn't happen like that, over time, you get more of individuals with PWS may have kind of heightened fight or flight, and it kind of settles that down, and that may be contributing to the reduction in temper outbursts. But I wouldn't expect it to change actual energy levels or activity levels in an individual with PWS. I think the other thing that maybe hasn't come through, Lisa, I did want to mention is the person with PWS who is getting the stimulation really shouldn't feel it. It's not, there should be no unpleasant sensation. So when Lisa says, you have to set it each day, that is, you set it to just where they can feel it, and then you step back from that. So they should never really feel it. There should never be any unpleasant sensation. It shouldn't, hurt them or anything. So for people who are imagining, like an electric shock, it's not going to be like.
What does
that's a great point, Teresa. Sorry.
What does it feel like? I'm picturing like a TENS machine.
So similar in concept. So there is this electrode on the ear. And again, I don't know if you can see this on my ear currently. It rests in an area that's in a fold of skin just above the ear canal. It's very lightweight. It just hooks over the ear. You can see it here. It's clipped to my clothing. So, as they have it on, the sensation of this on the ear is very minimal. But turning the device on and increasing that stimulation, somebody may describe it as a tingling, a tickling, a prickling sensation. They can feel it in the ear, down the cheek, down the neck, sometimes, even in the throat. We'll give like a tactile sensation to say, like, if you gently brush on the cheek like that, you kind of get that chill feeling that's tickly kind of sensation. It feels like that. So as you're increasing stimulation, it's very subtle. It goes from nothing to just gradually feeling more and more. And it takes a little bit of practice to know what you're feeling. But as Teresa mentioned, we want it to actually be set to a level where they're not sensing that there's a stimulation there. It should never be uncomfortable. It should never be painful. It should never be something that's, the sensation is distracting to them. So they're going to turn it up till they just barely feel it. And then the instructions are to turn it down until they no longer sense it. So one step back from where they first start to feel it, and that's where they'll wear it. Also, the level at which they wear it can change from day to day. So even within a time frame of the day, if they have a couple of wearing sessions, they may have it set at one level earlier in the day and another level later in the evening. And the next day, it may be at a different level. Each time you turn the device off, it goes back to zero. So you are working from zero each time you set this. When you turn it on, you'll turn up till you feel it, and then back down one.
So it's just above the ear canal, but does it affect hearing in any way or block hearing?
That's a great question. It does not, because it's not in the ear canal at all. There's nothing that's going to obstruct the ear or stimulate the nerve of hearing in any way. It's simply resting in that fold of skin. And it's, again, that just sort of very gentle tingling sensation, but there's no low level auditory stimuli at all.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. There's a question that says, I have a kiddo in a provider setting during the week, but with me on the weekend. So we do have individuals that have similar situations. And again, working with that professional caregiver to administer use of the device during the times when they're in that setting, and then bringing the equipment with them to you when you're with them on the weekend. And if transmitting of that data is easier done over the weekend, that's fine. There's nothing magical about Friday. It just is a day that we ask people to typically send it. But if you would like to have management and control over that, sending it on a Saturday is just as good. So you could be in charge of that piece if you want, just to minimize the number of activities that you're asking the professional caregivers to do. And another question has come in that says, you mentioned that the device is worn forever if it works. Do you anticipate that the 4 hours will continue to be the wearing threshold? So I'll let you answer, Teresa.
Yeah, I think we probably don't know. In the small study that Tony Holland did, that's why we started at 4 hours, because he did 4 hours and that worked well. So we're starting there. When they backed down in time, they saw some of the temper outbursts coming back up. There are some differences in how the stimulation is going to be in our trial compared to his trial. So, it may be that we can back down. I think the first order of business is to show yes or no that we have an effect. If we have an effect, then I think we would do additional studies to really, because it's a little bit of a pain in the neck to wear this thing 4 hours a day. So if we could do it for 2 hours a day, I think, we would do additional studies to do that. The other thing is, we do see not everybody is doing it 4 hours a day. We really hope everybody will do it 4 hours a day so we can get a clear answer. But we will have some data on, different usage just because life happens and, not everybody is able to do 4 hours every day, 7 days a week. Although, again, we hope you will.
And will you be able to see on the other end how long people are actually doing it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So not only will the parent be able to see their daily use, both on the device, there's a visual indicator, and on the app, but those data files that are sent each week, they contain a lot of information that help us understand how the person with PWS has been wearing the device. So we'll be able to give some guidance back to the family if it looks like we need to counsel on how to set the device or the length of time that they're wearing the device. We'll be able to look at that information.
And we'll be able to hopefully, look at, does it work better when people wear 4 hours in a row or split it up or, those kinds of questions. I think we'll have some detail on that maybe will be helpful for us as we move forward if it is an effective treatment.
That's great. Well, thank you, ladies. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Do you, Lisa? That we didn't get
I
to?
don't. I think
Okay.
we got to them.
This is such a great opportunity, especially I hear a lot of families very uncomfortable with the idea of medications. And here's a way to not only participate in a trial and be a part of that, but also hopefully get some benefit.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so very much.